Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. My guest this episode is Brandon Jordan. He's been a professional musician all of his adult life and is the founder of the punk band KillRadio. Now, Brandon brings the power of music to those in need through the program Rock to Recovery. And please note, there are some audio quality issues with this episode, and I apologize for those. All right, Brandon, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And, we're going to jump right in. We don't have a ton of time today. So how many kids do you have?
I have two children. One is, my oldest is a 6-year-old boy. My youngest is a 3-year-old girl. My son's name is Dale, and my daughter's name is Arrow.
Right on. Did you always want to be a dad?
I can say yes without, on a subconscious level, I think yes. I mean, but I can say, as a sober dad, the first time I went through, one of the fellowships and I did a lot of the step work of that, the person who took me through the steps asked me to put a wish into this wish jar. And once I did that step work, he asked me to put a wish into the wish jar, and I had written on that piece of paper that I wanted to be a father. That wish came true about 9 years later.
I was watching an interview with you, and we were telling your story, and you talked about being a parent or a dad is sort of the most punk rock thing you've ever done. And, for those who don't know you, you were the singer in KillRadio, which is a punk band. So you do have some credibility in making that statement. But can you talk a little more about what you mean by that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I still am the singer of KillRadio. We are going into our 23rd year. So as a punk rocker in my 20s, I thought being punk rock was one thing, just not following the rules and sticking it to the man and whatever kind of predictability in the rebellious zone, and then completely changing that narrative later on in my life and realizing, oh, wow, it's not about just being a rebel or just questioning every single rule, just question. It's about completely changing the trajectory of my own life. Like, I have the word revolution tattooed on my left arm. And when I was 20, it was all about overthrowing, preconceived, notions and systems and, fire and everything that goes along with that. And then as I've gotten older, the revolution seems like my own internal revolution to change my own behavior, not worrying about the world changing its behavior, but me changing my own behavior. So my looking at the world at a younger age was always like, what needs to be changed out there? And as I've gotten older, it's what needs to be changed personally on the inside from me. And I found, and that's why I'm saying it's punk rock, it's a hell of a lot easier to point fingers and tell everybody else to change than to take the time to really explore your own behavior and change your own shit. And to chase your own demons and to look at your own shadows. I mean, it's really, really easy to take everybody else's inventory. It's a lot harder to take your own. So that's why I say, this journey into recovery has been more punk rock than my punk rock music career. And why I'll put a finer point on it and ultimately answer your question is, men in my family have traditionally died of the disease of alcoholism and addiction. I lost my dad to an overdose when I was 4, and I lost my grandfather when I was in my teens. I was actually never allowed to meet him because he was, he actually put a needle in my father's arm at the age of 14. My dad, really had a very limited scope of what was available to him due to his father. So the males in my life really, had alcoholism and addiction, really, uh, decide the fate in a lot of ways, and they weren't able to, escape that. So why I'm saying the most punk rock thing I've done now is be a father to 2 is because I've been able to give my children the house I wish I had grown up in. So I didn't get it. And there was definitely a lot of self-pity and anger around that crap when I was growing up, and I always felt different then. And, a tinge of sorry for myself. So a little bit of anger, a little bit of self-pity. And then you got that oh, fuck you attitude that I was rolling around with, chip on the shoulder. But now that I'm older and I'm sober and I'm a father and a homeowner, and I've given the house I wish I had been raised in to my children. So I didn't get it, but I can give it. And to me, that's the most punk rock thing I've ever done. It's completely changed or broken the chain of dysfunctional fathers in my family chain.
Yeah, and I mean, that's super cool. I mean, it does show those sort of generational traumas move forward, or that, people who are really in the throes of addiction are willing to pull even their own kid into it, right? Like, this is my life, so I don't really have anything, so I'm going to pull you into it. But it shows, right? People can change. I mean, I believe that people can change, and you show that. Can you give a little more of, sort of your story and when you started using, right? Because that sort of history of your family didn't turn you away from it, right? Maybe it drew you in.
Yeah. I didn't drink and use during high school, which is not the norm. I took a little bit longer to get into it. One of the things, it was a cautionary tale. I lost my dad when I was super, super young, 4. So it's like an odd thing. Like, if, you tell a 4-year-old your dad died of an overdose of medicine or whatever it is, it doesn't make as much sense. As I got older and older and older, and then it started to make sense to me. But my drinking and my using kind of progressed in my early 20s, and I do feel as though I kind of became an adult at a really, really young age, and I had to hold it together for mom and for the kind of, the jumping around that we were doing a lot when I was a kid. And my mom, God bless her, she did the best she could, having, being a single mother. And but I do feel as though I grew up really, really, really early, and I got really, really serious at a very young age. So when I became in my early 20s and things were more settled for me, I honestly started branching out and kind of getting back into some sort of chaotic behavior for myself, because I think I had skipped that in my teenage years and when I'm in my young years. Like, there wasn't this, my inner child hadn't really come out. And I think it came out through drugs and alcohol. Things were so serious from such a young age for me. Once I finally did try drugs and alcohol, I was off to the races within like 3 weeks. I had not used drugs and alcohol, and I was around a bunch of people that did it. I was drawn to people like that. And then as soon as I did it, within 3 weeks, my own peer group was like, yo, you are great. We cannot party with you. So I am definitely an example of the the obsession getting lit off as soon as I drink and I use. They just haven't made enough drugs or alcohol to satisfy a guy like me. That's why I'm comfortable with the medical assessment that I have a disease called addiction and alcoholism. And if they showed up with a submarine full of drugs and alcohol for me, man, eventually I'd be like, "Where's the next submarine?"
Or Dan.
Or Dan, yeah, absolutely. But so I start drinking and using in my early 20s, and it spirals out of control very, very quickly. Start drinking and using around 21, and by the time I'm 24, 25, I'm into IV drug use. I am into heroin, cocaine at the same time, shooting speedballs. And I've got a pretty hefty habit, and I'm stealing. I've stolen from my band. I've stolen from my band manager. I'm stealing from fans. I had the luxury of being in a popular band, nothing famous, but popular. So, when you're home, you've got plenty of couches to sleep on because people still think it's cool. And I'm stealing their shit and taking it and selling it, or, asking for money from everybody, and being a taker. And people were able to enable me for a while there because of the charisma of being in a band and all that crap. Kept me out there for a little bit extra longer until, I was finally homeless. I was living in a bush, in a cocaine psychosis. The week before I got clean and sober, I'm in a cocaine psychosis. And there's an old lady who's walking her dog, and she walks by my bush one too many times. And I had to just pop right out, grab her by her knitted sweater, just take the shit out of her and ask her who the hell she was working for. Because I was in psychosis and I was paranoid, and that's where drinking and using took me to a place where I was without a home, thinking the old ladies and their dogs are working for FBI, the CIA, the Illuminati, whatever the hell he's working for, and confronting them when they walk by my bush one too many times.
So that, from the sweater grabbing, what was the thing? Was that it? Or what was the pivot point for you?
Ooh, well, I had tried a couple different times to get clean and sober, and there was, a couple ideas in the back of my head, like, oh, if I just don't do the hard stuff, I can control it, and I had to learn the hard way for me that there is no moderation and there is no controlling it. So eventually I got to a place where I realized I couldn't drink and use and control it, and I had to stop everything. And the jumping off point to actually get out of that bush and to get into treatment was honestly, there was a woman named Angel. I swear to God, her name was Angel, and she worked at the local needle exchange, and where I was at a first name basis. That was my cheers, where everybody knows your name, the needle exchange. And Angel said, I can see you're really hurting out there. Would you like me to put in a phone call and see if we can get you detoxed in a local place called Tarzana Treatment Center out here in Los Angeles, where I am from and live? And I had to consider it. I had to think about it, I don't know if I'm ready to stop suffering this bad. I don't know. My bushes, in Los Angeles.
You've been fixing it up.
Yeah.
Get all the things a bush needs.
And, every now and then we can get out of the bush and we can stay at somebody's house, steal their shit and all that. So So there's still all that chaos and dysfunction to really get into. But within 5 days, I had told her yes, and she had put in a phone call, and I was able to actually detox for the last time at a place called Tarzana Treatment Center. And then from there, I actually got transported to Los Angeles County rehab. It was with 300 people out in the desert called Acton. And I stayed there for 4 months. So I honestly have to tell you that I got sober and was able to get put up and fed and was given a bed on the taxpayer dollars of the Los Angeles County. So if you're a taxpayer in Los Angeles, thank you. You are a part of my recovery. I have to salute you because that absolutely got me off the streets. And that's how I got in the last time. That was on October 15th of 2007. So I've been clean and sober and safe for over 60 years.
So I think it's super important to touch on sort of that public funding, because I think it's important that it is a disease, right? And we treat other diseases, and if you went to the hospital with a broken leg and you didn't have insurance, you would get treated, right? And I think this is the thing to pivot to what you do now with Rock to Recovery, to sort of show why that investment in people and getting them healthy matters. So can you talk a little bit about what you do now in that work?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing up Rock to Recovery. Yes. The work I do now, and I've been doing it for the last 10 years, along with my brothers and sisters at Rock to Recovery, has been to bring the healing power of playing music to people in treatment so that they can experience the healing, transformative power of playing music. And the unique thing with Rock to Recovery is we're playing music with people who don't know how to play music. So it is a music-based program for people who don't play music and have probably never experienced what it's like to be a musician or to get lost in the creative process because they are, quote unquote, not a musician. And my boss, his name is Wes Gear. He was in he's been in a couple bands. He founded a band called Head PE, and then he jumped in for 4 years as the touring guitarist for Korn. So we came from a band background. There's a lot of music therapists out there that use music as a therapeutic modality, and it's a little more distant from we're listening to music. But we came from a band background. And so when the company was getting put together, it was like, how could we start bands with people that are in treatment? And how could we have them do individual small little things that will add up to this ultimate kind of final little product experience that we can have called a song with this band? And my boss Wes figured out the model, and then we've expanded within the last 12 years. Now we have 16 facilitators from California to Nashville to Oregon. We're mostly on the West Coast, but we are expanding, and we write. I want to get the numbers right, but we write almost 150 songs a week and upload it to SoundCloud. At the end of every session, we write a song and we upload it to SoundCloud so that, the people that are in treatment have something to listen to after we complete the sessions. So many people have started a lot of things and not completed them. And so it's very cool for people to say, we wrote a song today. We started with nothing, but maybe a conversation of some recovery themes. And it ended up being a song we can enjoy, we can sing, we can dance to. And on a personal level, I love the work I get to do with Rock to Recovery. I'm going to make a bold statement. I think I'm probably maybe one of the people who have written the most songs in the last, couple of years. I can honestly say I quantified it last year. I wrote 989 songs with people in treatment last year. 989 songs, which is awesome because sometimes it's rap they want to do. I mostly work with teenagers, so there's a lot of rap songs we do. Reggaeton, reggae, disco, EDM, a lot of country music, obviously rock, alternative. You get to explore all different genres of music and different vibes, and people get to learn new instruments, and they get to express themselves in ways they never thought they could do beforehand. And after these sessions, here's what I think is really cool about getting involved in music and getting involved in your recovery in every which way, whether it's meditation or fellowship or inspirational literature. And whatever actions you're taking on a daily basis for your recovery, I think the actions we put into it have a very similar effect on the brain. One is when you're playing music, it fires off more brain activity than anything else you could do in life. One of the top dogs. But let's go serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, lowers our anxiety, helps us with depression, trauma, triggers, boredom, all the things that got me sent to my treatments. And so it lowers, the natural side effects of those things are reduced naturally by playing music. So there's that element of things that are helping us with the things that make us uncomfortable, impatient, and impulsive, most importantly. When I get impulsive, I usually get a new sobriety date. I really got to be careful about being impulsive. But what's really interesting is when we get so lost in the creative process of making this art, we have this incredible ability to not solve any of our life's problems other than the problem we have with how we approach our problem. If I don't do anything and I don't take action against my head, likes to think about problems, I will increase the size of my problems to an unmanageable size. And that's my problem. Right? My problem is the way I approach my problem.
Yeah, getting in your head can be a fucking dangerous place to hang out. That was my thing. I'm like, there's a lot of just dark morass in there, and I gotta figure out how to get out of my head.
Yeah. And so in Rock to Recovery, we're playing this music and we're writing these songs. Sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're silly, but long story short is we're activating the brain. And after the session, a lot of people walk out of the group and we haven't solved anybody's problems, but we've shrunken the size of the problems in perception of the problems within their head. We've shrunken it to a manageable size. And the mind is very, very, very powerful. And there's two sides to that coin. We can shrink the size of our problems and we can increase the size of our problems. And sometimes just doing something completely different outside of the realm of our comfort zone will change the size of our problems. And people will walk out with a sense of hope like, you know what, my life isn't perfect, but shit's going to be okay. And I really think that's the sweet spot. Nothing's perfect, but shit's going to be okay. I have a sense of hope. I don't know what the finish line's going to look like, but now I'm willing to get off the starting block.
Yeah, it strikes me too that you're showing people a place of some beauty while they're struggling. And if you're able to find beauty while you're struggling, there, to my mind, if you can look forward to when you've moved through your worst struggle, imagine what the beauty is going to look like there. If you're finding this moment of art and music and beauty when you're really in a tough place, imagine where that could go.
Absolutely. You're right. Now you're saying that you and I are both talking about the beauty because we've seen it on the other side.
Right.
And I remember what it was like being in treatment myself, walking in, I was 128 pounds with abscesses up and down my arms and just come out of the bush, as we discussed earlier. And so I didn't see the beauty yet. I don't know about you, but upon reflection, I realized that, the thing that drinking and using really stole from me beyond my music career or, other career opportunities or money or relationships, what it really stole from me was the opportunity to get to know how strong I am. Because every single day I ask drugs and alcohol to do the heavy lifting for me. Before I got clean and sober, the only thing I was just interested in, how strong is the shit I'm about to buy? That's what I wanted to know. And so now we're in recovery, and we've been doing it long enough where, we've walked through some things we probably didn't have to walk through. We didn't want to walk through. And because we've walked through it clean and sober, we now know how strong we are. We now have some evidence like, oh shit, when the mountain gets that high, I can climb over it, But when you're in early recovery, you don't know that about yourself yet. You haven't been tested. And for me, what was really hard in early recovery is I've been running for myself my entire life. Drugs and alcohol were the most expensive pair of running shoes I ever put on. So now I get clean and sober, and it's like, okay, cool, I'm not putting a needle in my arm today, but I have to hang out with me all day, and I don't like that guy. That guy's losing. And so that's hard, right? To wrestle with the fact that you're going to have to hang out with yourself. And so in Rock to Recovery, I really think we're changing people's dynamic with music. Music is not just a thing; it's an active friendship. So that when that self-hatred pops up, like I can't believe I did this, I can't believe that, when you're sitting there in treatment, okay, I understand, but let's take the claws off ourselves for a second. Let's put our hands on this piano. I'm going to teach you how to play 2 chords. I'm going to give you this guitar in your hands. I'm going to actually give you a guitar. You're going to play these 2 notes. And here's a pen. Here's a piece of paper. Would you write about that self-hatred? Would you write about some of the things, maybe a way you would like to be kinder to yourself? We put instruments in people's hands so they can stop beating themselves up for a second, so that we give them a little bit of release, so that self-hatred can kind of stop for a second. And then we introduce that healing power of music and that active friendship, that music can actually take shape in our lives. I think of music as an active friendship in my life that always answers my phone call. It never goes to voicemail. It's always riding alongside with me. This is the fact that now, if you have, Spotify or Apple Music, you've got everybody's catalog in your phone. So, you want to listen to 30 seconds of this artist and 30 seconds of that artist, or for the most part, a lot of people make playlists for certain vibes that they're going through. Oh, the crying in the shower day playlist. Oh, cool. I can go there with that. Or I'm feeling really hyped. I'm sure a lot of people listen to, hype music when they're working out, So we use music to help us through the ups and downs of life. I try and have people look at it as a new, an active friendship that they have in their life that they should use on a daily basis to help them, make stronger decisions about their life.
Yeah, I like that, because I remember when, I was getting healthy and trying to deal with anxiety and depression, and I had this moment of clarity where I was like, oh, right. Anxiety and depression, they'll never let me down because they're reliable. They'll always be there if I want them, right? They're there. They're 100%. No one else might like me. I might be, doing a crappy job at work, but anxiety and depression, baby, you're there for me. So, replacing it with, and I grew up playing music, and I say all the time, music still saves my life, but replacing the bad friend, like anxiety, depression, and the friend you really shouldn't be hanging out with. You won't want your kids to hang out with that friend. With like music, which is a much more reliable friend, if you will.
I absolutely. I can say honestly, I had this one I had this one day where I was fighting with my wife, and via text, because I'm in one place, she's at another place, and we had some disagreement. And I'm texting her all the reasons why I'm right. She's probably texting me the same reasons why she's right. We're having this go back and forth. And then I finally finish words, and I'm driving home. Well, obviously, I like a good lawyer. I'm trying to, I'm going to come home and present my case why I'm right. She's probably wrong, or she should look at it my way, or whatever the case may be. And so I'm driving home with a case to present to her. And I remember just like putting on some heavy music and like just working that frustrating energy through the body, through my voice, and singing at the windshield. And you know what we do when we get involved in the music and you're driving and it's a good, you're in a good flow state. And I just worked out all of that frustration through my body. And instead of showing up to the house with a list of reasons why I was right, I showed up to the house with a bouquet of flowers, and I gave it to my wife. And that's not a story that I'm trying to make myself look good in. And that's a story I'm telling you to show you the power of music and how it can actually make us make better decisions in our daily life. Music actually helped me access my feelings of frustrations, which may or may not have been even related to what was going on with my wife. So I'm very good at compartmentalizing things. So maybe if somebody at work upsets me, but I can't take it out on them, unknowingly, I might take it out on somebody else, or take it out on my kid who's being impatient. So then I'm impatient with them because somebody was an asshole to me 3 hours earlier, And so music literally helps me take out, work out those feelings of frustration so that when I come home, right, I've dealt with it. I'm not going to take out the work day on the family and disrupt their flow when I get home. And that's an interesting that's an interesting time of the day where you're transitioning, code shifting, as we talk about a lot, code shifting from the hat you wear as a career and working, and then coming home and then working at the house, and working with the family and doing homework or whatever it is that you do. That code shifting in between, music can really help out with that. And help ramp you down into the next part of your day.
Yeah, I have a 40-minute drive, each way. And so the in commute to work is a little bit like, let's get hyped up, for the day.
Uh-huh.
I have deadline driven job, so it can be pretty stressful. But then the way home is that like, all right, nobody at home needs the stresses that I had today at work. It's not their problem. So for me, I got the music on. It's that decompression thing. You're singing, you're maybe drumming on the steering wheel, whatever it is it just flows out of you because you want to walk in that door to your family with a smile and an I love you, not with a list of your grievances from your work day. Certainly I do say some things about work sometimes to my wife, but especially your kids, they don't need to hear about that. It's not, it's not their problem.
You're right. Yeah, they get to be kids. And even if they came home with this, I don't know if your kids are any different than mine. They don't care.
Yeah, we're not
They're
cool.
gonna listen anyway.
We're not cool anymore. Even you singing in a punk band, and they don't care about this shit that happened at work. The proposal that I had to get out.
Yeah. Hey, Dad, did you get that deadline, squared away? I've never heard that question when I've come home.
I'm still hoping.
Yeah.
It's still fucking time. It might happen.
Yeah.
I mean, my oldest is almost 21, so he's working. So there is a little like he works at, in HVAC and he's doing his thing. So there is a little bit more when they enter that world, but the youngest is 8 and he does not care about any of that. He wants to have me at baseball and have me read to him at bedtime. Like that's all the stuff. I want to pivot to one thing. So a topic that has come up a few times recently, and I've heard, in my research for this, you talk about it, is the topic of what are you going to tell your kids kind of about your experiences and struggles and all that. I mean, I've been really open. I mean, my 2 younger are my stepkids, and they only know me as somebody that's sober. My oldest has some recollection, and the 16-year-old, his younger sister, doesn't really remember because she was really little when I stopped drinking. But like, what are the conversations that you're going to have?
That's a really good question. I'm going to slightly deflect it in the sense of I've started to have those conversations, not in a very specific way, but like what you just said, I would have to ask guys like you, like, how did you bring that up? So right now, all my 6-year-old son knows is that on certain nights of the week, Dad goes to his meeting. And he knows some of the guys that I go to the meeting with because we go surfing together, and he's met them before, and they come to his basketball games, and there's there's this cool thing that goes on that he knows the people that I go to the meetings with. He also knows the guys that I play music with in Rock to Recovery and all that stuff. So he's been to our events before, at our concerts, and he knows that Dad goes to these meetings. And he also knows that he doesn't have a grandfather, my dad, because my dad took too much medicine one day. But we really haven't broached that subject too much. So as before, I'm going to be asking guys like you, like, hey, how did you kind of bring that up? Because I haven't really had to cross that bridge. So I'm kind of open to since you say it's been brought up a bunch. What's been discussed, what has been successful,
I mean, I think a lot of it, and I think this is sort of true almost in any genre of more difficult topics as a parent, is that the moments can come organically. I mean, I do remember with the oldest, there was a point, and it wasn't really about my recovery, but it was, he doesn't know what any of these drugs are. Right? He doesn't know. Like, I was like, you need to have this information just as a young person who's going to enter your teenage years. Like, if somebody is going to offer you meth or like, you need to actually know what that is. Like, you need to be armed with information about what these drugs are, especially now with fentanyl on the street and all that stuff. It's kind of a different world. People talk about it's just weed, but that's not necessarily true anymore, because, things are laced or kids are getting stuff online that they think is a certain drug and it's not. It's a fake pill, right? So just broadly having those conversations. But I think, and I try and do this as a parent with all these topics or other things in my life, is this really is honesty. There's like no shame in having struggled. And I believe this to be true in my professional life too, as I talk about it at work. There's no shame in struggle, and you should be proud of recovery, right? And everybody struggles to a different extent. So like, my kids know I don't drink, and and I've told them why, and the why has sort of evolved into more details as they've gotten older, right? When they're younger, 4 or 5, it's just enough for them to sort of know, I don't drink. My house is a sober house. Not everyone I talk to lives in a sober house. Some people's spouses still drink. It really depends on everyone's situation. But, early on, they knew that I didn't drink. And as they got older, the sort of the why got more involved, because it's also, these things can travel in families, as your story and many other stories indicate. And so if you don't tell those stories, or they don't understand where you came from, the possibility of them, following that path exists.
Yeah, that's a big point. Yeah, we have an obligation to explain it in a way that's like, hey, you can listen to this, and it also could be your story, if you're not careful as well. And I know somebody had that. Okay, so the other thing that I am very, very, very lucky, because I am second generation fellowship. Okay, so I have two people in my immediate family. I have an uncle on my mother's side and an uncle on my father's side, both of which have close to 40 years or a little bit over 40 years of sobriety. So when I did, ultimately, need help, they guided me, in the right direction. They kind of understood what I was going through, and I had a couple relapses, but I knew where to go back, right? And so they had that conversation. One of them had the conversation. I cannot remember, though, fully how it all went down. I just remember I attended a meeting with one of my uncles, and he was like, "This is what I do. This is what I do to help myself." And I think probably when I have to have maybe a bigger, deeper conversation with my son, probably having one of those uncles with me, who has guided me in a lot of these life decisions. He's a sober dad as well, and an artist, and somebody I really look up to. It's my dad's brother, and I imagine I'll have that conversation with him. Maybe even with him there. But that's a really good question. Now I'm doing that thing where we're having a podcast, like thinking.
Yeah.
I'm like a couple of years from now. Right now, I'm sitting down in a chair I'm actually not sitting in, and I'm projecting. So that's a really deep question. I'm not sure exactly how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, like I said, it's a little take it as it comes. And, it is in some ways the same genre as how you're going to talk about sex or any of those other things, or self-harm has a lot of, range to it. And my 16-year-old, or almost 17, she'll be 17 on the 28th, and she's given me permission to say that she had, struggled through an eating disorder. So they're many versions of self-harm, and like that one blindsided me. I wasn't ready for that doctor's appointment when they were like, your kid lost 30 or 40 pounds last year. And you're like, I suck as a dad. Like, I didn't even see it. I was going to the gym with her, so, sometimes those things just come at you from the side. I will say the clarity of sobriety allowed that to be, dealt with for sure. A version of me that still had 3 or 4 drinks a night to try and just get rid of all the things that bothered me might not have handled that well because it was hard.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I hope she's doing well now.
She is. She's fucking killing it. She wants to be a nurse, and she's just like winning awards, and and that's the sort of thing that's so cool to see. Is like when your kids are just out there and they're just killing it, and you're like, hell yeah! Like she found her groove, and
that's beautiful. Kudos to her. Way to go. That's one thing I'd like to kind of talk about, and it's could you have to jet pretty soon? I'm gonna go do some rock to recovery today, but what is important? What you just said is, she gave me license to talk about it. And that is very 2024 of us, to talk about mental health or to talk about struggles and to talk about it with transparency. When I was going through my shit in the 90s, we weren't going to talk about that. And if I had been to go see a doctor or whatever, if I had been more transparent about my own self-harm or my own Mental health. I mean, I had actually, attempted suicide by the time I was a teenager. I wanted off the fucking planet, but I didn't tell anybody about it. So I know, in some aspects, it'd be really cool if the world is advanced and progressed, further in certain aspects. But in one aspect, in the area of mental health, we talk about that in such a louder voice today than we did in the past. In the 90s, if your daughter was in the 90s, she would be like, Dad, you're not talking about that shit. That is a closed book. And then us as dads, the shame we would have felt, like, oh my God, I didn't see it. I didn't see the thing. And so because I didn't see it, I'm not going to talk about it. In the 90s, we don't talk about shit that makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
It makes people uncomfortable. We also didn't have the language to talk about it, and we didn't have this space to talk about it. So that's a really, 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 really interesting thing that you said, to not only talk about it, but that she gave license to talk about it. I mean, and I think that's how we get better. That's the only way we get better, is by talking about what's happened, and then, there's another dad out there like, oh shit, like that happened to me. And I've been walking around thinking like I was the world's worst dad. And then it kind of just lessens our uniqueness. It lessens our isolation in our own brain. We can identify with each other. And for me, what really, really helped me is once I started looking at the similarities, not the differences, in people's story. And I started looking at for the emotions and the thoughts that were underneath the actions and the behavior. And I started hearing the similarities. I started realizing there was this common problem. And once I admitted that there was this common problem, the really good news is that there's also a common solution. And that's the good news for people like us that are walking around thinking we're so unique. Nobody gets us. Nobody understands. That's where the relief comes in. That's where, hey, Mom, it's not a phase. It's a lifestyle. We've been rolling with this thing for a while now because there was a common solution, not just a common problem.
And I think that's an awesome thing to end on. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
I'd love to connect more, man, when I'm not such a rushed, crazy dude. It seems like I had that conversation with a lot of people, like, let's connect more. But I've also been really, really trying to put together maybe a super dad Zoom meetings. But that's something I've been trying to manifest. I've been having these these manifestations.
Well, we should, because
meditations.
Part of the origin of this was that sort of idea that there would be this other component of community beyond the listening, and so maybe we should just figure that out, because all we have to do is pick a date and a time and put it out in our networks, and then
that would be really cool. Yeah, man. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when it's not other sober dads, sometimes people give me advice that is so not useful.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Right? You literally, that doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's just hard to parent sometimes. They're teenagers being teenagers is sometimes not that fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't have teenagers, but I work with teenagers. And so, yeah, and some people, you have a problem. You're like, I got this problem, and they'll give you advice. You're like, I have no time to complete this task, and they'll give you a solution that would actually require more time. And you're like, right. No, you don't understand. The time is the issue. And so, anyway, sober dads get it. You know what I mean? We sometimes have a shorthand, and I feel as though my greatest relationships I have with people that are so useful to me are the ones that have a shorthand.
Thanks for listening. Sober Dadcruit is a DIY project by Stephen Kimball, who writes, edits, and produces the show. To support the show, please review it where you listen to podcasts or visit SoberDadCrew.com to buy some merchandise or make a donation.